bothered by the storms here.
Away, picked up by Andre from 3/4 court, and he hit it! He had his eyes on the prize and let it fly!
What's going on, all you Tannimals? We are back with the Tanndemonium Sports Show, broadcasting live here exclusively on Twitch, twitch.tv/Vendetta Sports Media. Proud member of the Vendetta Sports Media Podcasting Network. With me, as always, the co-host of the Stars, Memphis Grizzlies super fan, the man, the myth, the legend, the chin pubes, Jackson Law. J Law, how the hell are you?
I'm good, man. Game 2 tonight, lost a tough one. Game 1 to Golden State, but it's okay. We're not worried. I've got my Grizz towel right here for good luck for tonight. Says in the immortal words of a meme, Memphis, the most beautiful land in the world. So hopefully we can have a little bit of that Memphis luck tonight, even the series.
Awesome. And of course, joining us as he does on the monthly, you know him here in the Pittsburgh area, as I try to send a tweet as I talk. He's on 93.7 The Fan here in Pittsburgh. He is also on KDKA doing the sports shows there. The man, the myth, the legend, Josh Taylor. JT, what's going on, man?
What's up, brothers? It's good to finally be back. The last couple appearances, things have just been crazy. Some family-related stuff, some absolutely
computer stuff,
so some issues going on with my family, but everything's good. Everybody's okay. Everybody's happy. My computer's working. I'm here. We're doing good. For the record, want to say this first time chance to talk about this publicly. Had a great time at Brian's wedding, so congratulations to Bryan and Sharon. So
thank you.
Really enjoyed that, and just excited to talk to you again, brother.
Oh, same here. It was definitely a good time to be had. Of course, the one person that wasn't there and we were looking forward to being there was Dancing Trey.
No Trey.
No Trey. He wasn't able to get it going, but it's all right. We had fun. We had a good time.
Good time was had by all.
Absolutely, especially except my son, Brian Jr. had a little. He had his first brush with manhood and he didn't like it, so he went back to childhood.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Courtney in the house. Hope you're doing well.
Hey, Courtney
coming in on the maternity. I love it. So as we all know, in weddings, the groom takes off the garter and he tosses it, and one single man catches it. My son caught the garter.
That's a great story.
Not knowing what that meant. So then when Sharon tossed the bouquet, my good friend Rachel caught it. And she's like, he's a child. And he's like, what's going on? I was like, and I think what one of the groomsmen told him is like, you have to put that on her. And he goes, put it where, on her arm? And he goes, no. You got to slide that up her thigh. And he goes, nope. Not doing it. And he was gone.
It was great. It was a great moment.
Hilarious. And then he tried to no sell it later on and was like, no, I wasn't scared. I'm like, son, if I call her back over here and she says, and she'll allow you to put it on, you're going to take off running. He goes, yeah, you're right.
Oh, man.
It's like, boy, you wouldn't know what to do with that if she let you. But that's just one of the funny stories. That's just one of the funny stories.
He will never live that down.
No, he won't. I'm gonna remind him of that on his wedding day if he chooses.
You
to get
should.
married. Oh,
You
I
should.
absolutely will. The one I apparently dodged a bullet though, J Law, because apparently all the groomsmen were contemplating telling their most embarrassing Bryan Tann stories, and I had 3 people, with Josh Taylor included, that could have made that a very, very interesting time. Because
I was actually one of the few that was not willing to do it. I was like, I'm
and I
let the man have
appreciate
his
that.
day. It was not.
I
me.
appreciate that. I appreciate that too.
I just thought of something. I forgot my Captain America shield. I was going to bust it up for the show. I
Oh,
left it downstairs.
yeah. Josh showed up, man, because it was a Disney Marvel themed wedding,
That's
and
dope.
all of us, groom and groomsmen, we wore tuxes, but our color scheme matched our Marvel characters. So Josh Taylor was Sam Wilson, aka Captain America.
Yep.
I was the Harlem's hero, Luke Cage. My son was Spider-Man, but he couldn't be Miles Morales because his tux would have been the same as my cousin Amos's, and Amos was Deadpool.
Amos's was amazing though.
Yeah, Amos's was great, especially when he took off his coat and his tie, and he had his vest open. He looked like Danny Terrio getting ready to do some dancing.
Amos, by the way, Amos is a good time. I was stuck with Amos on one side of me.
Yeah,
I had our buddy from high school, James Rice, on the other side. We did not lack for entertainment. I'll say that much.
man, Amos is a funny ass dude.
He's a trip, man. I love Amos.
Right. Now, what's really funny, though, is we had a bit of a mishap, though, Jackson, with the tuxedos.
Oh, yeah?
So I couldn't find my jacket. My best man could not find his vest.
Oh.
And he lost his key fob.
Oh.
And he's leasing that car.
Oh.
So he got to have that key fob or he got to come up with 5 bones. So I took my stuff and my son's stuff back. He takes his stuff back, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like worried. And then the hotel called and said that they found a coat and they found a vest, but they couldn't find a fob. So I get the coat and the vest. It's my best man's coat and his vest. Now he's swearing to me up and down he had his suit coat. No, he didn't, because it was in my room. He took my suit coat. He goes, I tried it on and everything, and it fit perfectly. It had to have been mine. No, he had my suit coat.
Jeez.
They found his suit coat and his vest, and his key fob was in it. So he dodged a bullet right there.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah, that was just a little bit of what would have been considered drama.
But that's the sign of a good wedding. If something doesn't turn up missing, you didn't have a good enough time.
That's very, very true. And I drank more than I intended to, and I was not drunk, which is amazing. I mean, I was feeling it, but I wasn't like, I still had my faculties to, do what Mr. Sakamoto do.
I ain't even mad at you, but the wife and I were just happy to have an evening amongst adults. So we were just like, hey, we're grown.
Hey, that is big when you
man. Yes, we're like we get a night among grown folks to do grown folk stuff. This is great.
Yeah.
So we had
But yeah, it was definitely the talk. It was definitely the talk of Pittsburgh up until a few days later when the NFL draft showed up in Vegas. Now, a lot of folks, I've been seeing a lot of draft grades. I believe it was the Seattle Seahawks, from what I saw, got the lowest draft grade of any team that I've seen. I believe they got a C. The Steelers got an A-.
I'm surprised the Patriots wouldn't have been so low. Sorry if we're jumping the gun here, but
the Patriots did not draft all that great, and I think that the bloom is finally off the Bill Belichick rose. And
as a Miami Dolphins fan, I am happy that that Pittsburgh, the Patriots did not draft well.
You can be happy that the Steelers drafted well. I won't hold that against you.
Hey, listen, I like the Steelers. I've always respected the Steelers. In fact, I saw I need to find the video again. I can't remember if I liked it or not. It was a TikTok. But it's this dude on TikTok, and he's been going like through every single team and doing their top 5 worst draft picks,
Yeah.
and he got to the Steelers, and he was like, "I'm pissed, dude. It's like it took me forever to find one from the Steelers, and it's like the people on this list, they aren't even that bad. They're just not as good as the other Steelers players because the Steelers for 40 something years have been excellent at drafting."
So who
They
did he
always
pick? So who did he pick?
I can't remember. I have to
Artie
find it.
Burns better be on there.
Artie Burns is probably on there. I'll guess Jarvis Jones.
He
He
does-
probably
Jarvis
on there.
Jones.
he does one at a time per video, and he did the first video today talking
All right.
about the first one.
Well, I'll tell you right now.
It was someone
Artie
that I
Burns-
recognized. I can't remember the name. I'll try to find it.
I'll tell you
when we
right
go to
now.
break or something.
Artie Burns, Jarvis Landry, and those are the main two. I can't
Definitely Jarvis Jones is up there.
Yeah, definitely Jarvis Jones.
Ziggy Hood's got to be on that list.
I would think Ziggy Hood should be on there because that's a guy that came in and there was a lot of folks thought that he was going to be the second coming of Casey Hampton, and he was in the Eaton department. That was about it.
Well, I mean, the one downside of Ziggy Hood was he was literally the 32nd pick because they had just won the Super Bowl, so they had to come and pick him. And usually, once you get past like 20 to 25, like the quality kind of drops off.
It's a huge drop. It's a huge drop.
I'm just going to TikTok real quick and seeing if I can find it. So I'm still listening though.
I definitely want to discuss some of the. I don't want to make this all about what the Steelers did. I really don't. But I do want to talk. I mean, but we cannot talk about
it is pretty big though. We can't talk about it significantly because he was the first. They took the only quarterback.
The only quarterback to come off the board
that was a big deal. That was a big deal for the first.
It really is because when you look at it, it took well into the second. It wasn't even second round. It was third round, wasn't it? Before another quarterback was taken, and that was Derek Ritter. So, I mean, which is funny to me with all the hype that started with Sam Howell. And then Malik Willis. And Ritter just sort of came up out of nowhere. But Kenny Pickett was always among those top names. And you can make the argument that this quarterback class isn't going to be as good as next year's. You can make that argument. That's fine.
It's not a bad argument.
It's not a bad argument. But if that next quarterback class are going to make good pros, it's going to take time to tell. Same with this one. But I will say that when you get a guy who, number one, is coming from the University of Pittsburgh program, which is not lighting the world on fire, it's not lighting the college football world on fire, has not done so since Danny Marino left for the Dolphins in the draft back in the 80s. Shout out to Danny Marino. But even still, when you look at the guys that have come out of Pittsburgh since Danny Marino, you got Craig Ironhead Hayward, you've got Larry Fitzgerald. Those are your main two that will come to mind. Like, all right,
Darrelle Revis. I'll go Darrelle Revis. I'll go Aaron Donald too.
You know what? You're right. Darrelle Revis, Aaron Donald, and the only reason why I lost sight on those two is because who was the wide receiver that came out the 1 year after? I think he was after Larry Fitzgerald. A couple years after Larry Fitzgerald.
I had to think about that. There's been quite a few of them. Honestly, there's a couple of good fit receivers.
I found the 5, by the way.
All right,
he released the other videos. All right.
Who's
Number 5 was Rashard Mendenhall.
Really?
He wasn't that bad of a pick.
Yeah, he was a first rounder. He didn't have a great career, but
I mean, he didn't have a first rounder's career.
I think he's going off of draft position because he has the 20th. He's the 23rd overall pick in the 2008 draft. So compared to where he's drafted to compared to his career,
the career yet.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That's
number 4, Devin Bush.
See, I'm still not ready. I give him an incomplete. I don't
he's still. I mean, I understand. We'll talk a little bit about the Steelers.
He's played all of 2 full seasons. It's a little bit too early.
We'll talk a little bit about the Steelers not picking up his 5th-year option a little bit.
Number
later.
3 is Troy Edwards.
He was an asshole.
That's a fair one.
I have a Troy Edwards as an asshole story for you too.
Number 2, Jarvis Jones.
Good.
Yep.
Deserves that.
Number 1, Huey Richardson.
Huey Richardson. Wow.
That is
1991.
That is a name that I have not heard since my mom was a virgin.
Oh man. Wow.
Yes, and LaShawn and Shady McCoy also from the University of Pittsburgh. Yeah. So and that's my point. So we've got less than 10 big names coming out of the University of Pittsburgh since Danny Marino. So
I'm sure I could think of more. It's just,
I mean, you probably
wasn't
could,
over
but
the
I'm talking
conversation.
about guys that went into the league and really sort of set it on fire.
Outside of the ones we already mentioned, that's pretty much the group right there.
Right.
That's
The only other quarterbacks that I can think of that came out of the University of Pittsburgh right off the top of my head is Tom Savage and Tyler Palko.
Tom Savage, Tyler Palko, Alex Van Pelt, who's coaching now.
Yeah.
I mean,
and neither one of those three did anything.
You can make the case for Joe Flacco, but he transferred out.
Yeah, he transferred out, so he doesn't count. He doesn't count. He transferred out.
No, I mean your point's well taken. I mean, here's where I am with the situation with Kenny Pickett. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking about things that haven't happened since Dan Marino, but the truth of the matter is, in 2021, Pitt had their best season since Dan Marino played for Pitt.
Yes,
they win double-digit games. They win the ACC championship game. They go to a New Year's Six bowl game. This is pretty much the high watermark for Pitt in the last 40 years.
Right.
So when you're riding off of that, it does make sense. The argument is valid.
Right. Not to
I
mention
will say this much, though.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I will say this much, though. Kenny Pickett coming out in this draft, it said two things to me. One, it showed me that he was able to at least, improve upon a 2020 season that wasn't that bad. That wasn't that great. It wasn't that stellar. Now, granted, some of those surrounding circumstances weren't necessarily his fault because, I mean, Bryan, I could have counted on you and Jackson to catch more passes than Pitt's receivers did in 2020. So there's that.
Hey, I still got all years of eligibility left. Sign me up.
But, I mean, all that said, going into 2021, he came back for another season with Mark Whipple. He had the benefit of that extra year because of losing, I believe it was 2020 to COVID. So that was another thing that he had going for him. So he had the opportunity to take advantage of a situation that he could use to his advantage. And he did exactly that. Had the best season of not only just a Pitt quarterback, he had the best season of almost any ACC quarterback.
Yeah.
He did a lot in that 1 year. He broke Dan Marino's career records. I think he left with like almost a dozen of them at Pitt, which is fantastic. So all that stuff stands up over time.
Right.
The thing that you look at, though, is that everything you do in your college career does not necessarily translate into the NFL. Correct. The question was, what were the measurables like? What were the positive traits? What were the negative traits? And what stands over time? I think the things that the Steelers, probably praised the most, Mike Tomlin talked about his competitiveness. Kevin Colbert talked about his accuracy. He called it pro accuracy. So those are some things that stood out. I made the case a few months back that when you looked at Kenny Pickett's career numbers, he withstood the Parcells test as far as what Bill Parcells, the criteria he would have, at least numbers-wise, for how he would draft a quarterback. And Kenny Pickett, numbers-wise, stood up to those numbers: completion percentage, games that he started in, wins, touchdowns to interception ratio. He checked off all those boxes. But I think the thing going into this draft was everybody knew that the Steelers were interested in those 5 top-rated quarterbacks: Willis, Pickett, Desmond Ridder. I think you mentioned Sam Howell. Mm-hmm. All those guys, the Steelers were going to do their due diligence. What we did not know is that they had their guy in mind already. And I don't think they expected him to be there at 20. Neither did I. I didn't expect him to be there at 20.
I thought he was. Matter of fact, I told you when we had the discussion, he's going to Carolina.
It was there were quite a few people that were convinced that Carolina.
The last time we did this show, Jackson, I said I even said flat out, all this talk about Kenny Pickett, can we stop talking about it because he's not going to be there at 20. He's going to go to Carolina. The Steelers are going to have to take they should take an offensive line. Matter of fact, I say they should take Tyler Linderbaum.
I felt the same way. I felt that there was going to be a situation where they were going to have to look at someone else on their board. And I really, truly, honestly believe they did not expect him to be there because there were so many other teams that could have made a run at a quarterback, and they didn't until the later rounds. And only 5 got taken in the entire draft. So that does tell you quite a bit as far as A, the collective talent, and B, the teams that were willing to pass on Kenny Pickett, maybe thinking he'd be around in the second round. And the Steelers said, you know what? We're not going to wait. And I'm of two minds about this because I was one of those people that thought, hey, they could have drafted down later in the first round. They could have traded down late in the first round and probably got him 5 or 6 picks down. Kansas City had 29 and 30 back-to-back. They could have made a move there. At the same time, I understand why they took him at 20.
You never, ever, ever, if your guy is there,
If your guy's there, you take him.
You take him right then and there.
Well, here's the added benefit of it. The added benefit of it is you get a quarterback. First of all, you're drafting him, which is the cheapest way to acquire a guy.
Yep.
That's the cheapest way to do it.
You got him for 5 years.
Well, if he's a first-round pick.
Yeah, if he's a first-round pick, you
get
him 4 years with a fifth option.
The fifth-year option, that becomes a lot more important in this scenario because the fifth-year option, it's still a much cheaper alternative than, say, if you have to try to sign the guy to a second contract because you didn't draft him in the first round. So it really turned out to be a good move for that reason for the Steelers. We could sit here and argue whether or not he was worth the 20th overall pick, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is the Steelers found a way to keep this situation cost controlled by drafting him in the first round, therefore being able to kick it in that fifth-year option if they felt the need to do so and keep the situation cost controlled. So when you add it all up now, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Mitchell Trubisky, they now have 3 quarterbacks for the price that you might pay for. Well, I mean, 4 if you're counting the guy they got in the later rounds, 2 out of South Dakota State. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But you're talking about your 3 top quarterbacks. You get them all for the price of what you're probably going to pay a starter for another team. That's a really smart move for them.
For one season.
So it's a very smart, cheap way to build depth at a position that you did not have last year.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Because they drafted that other fella out of South Dakota. Was it South Dakota?
South Dakota State, I think.
Mason Rudolph is gone by training camp.
I'm not so sure. He might be gone after training camp, but I mean, Kevin Colbert did make it known that they wanted 4 arms going into camp. And normally you do have 4 arms because you don't want, your same 3 quarterbacks throwing all the passes. You want to you don't want guys blowing themselves out, which is fine. So going into camp, I would agree. They're going to have 4 guys. By the end or after camp is over and it's all settled, maybe he's not still there. That's an entirely different situation.
So now, because here's the thing. Mason Rudolph has already shown you who he is on the field and off the field. I mean, I'm sorry. I remember there's been a few people that have sit here and tried to say, here comes Miss Odette, have tried to come in and say,
Odette. Hi, baby.
They tried to come in and say, well, that one game he started against Detroit, he didn't know he was starting until the night before. Yo, if you're the number 2, you got to be ready to go like that. It's not like he's in the Willie Beeman situation where he's number 3 and number 1 and 2 go down in subsequent plays.
I'm willing to absolve him for 2 reasons. One, he didn't find out till the day before, and usually you try to get some help with the game plan if things change. He never got that from the starter going in. He got no real help from Ben Roethlisberger with the game plan because they tailored that game plan to what Ben wanted to do instead of what might work on Mason Rudolph, and he got really no help being acclimated to that.
Okay,
the
John.
Second thing I will say that I not that I'm totally letting them off the hook, but this is something I'm not blaming on Mason Rudolph. The Steelers fumbled twice in overtime. And neither of them were by Mason Rudolph.
No, he can't control the fumble, he looked real good on that very, very, very first series. I'll give him that. I'm sorry.
He did his job well enough to put them in position to win the game, but the guys around him didn't follow.
But when you get beaten out by a guy who's not even in the league anymore, he's not even in the USFL. You get beaten out by a guy whose claim to fame is he's a duck caller. And his arm is just barely stronger than Ben Roethlisberger's was last year. The duck.
Put some respect on Devlin Hodges' name.
Put
some respect on Duck's name.
No, I can't because of the fact that he also, because you know what? He took his nickname not just from duck calling, but from, 2 of the greatest street ballers in the Venice Beach basketball era, the King and Duck.
God.
Yes. So I will not put respect on his nickname because that was someone else's nickname first.
Yeah,
all right. I did go there. We're going to take a quick break. We got to take our first break here. Garrett already hit me up in the chat saying we're almost at the break mark. So we're going to take a quick break. I want to talk to you guys about as Odette wants to play. She has lavender on her and it hasn't kicked in yet.
Oh.
Who do you guys think is the biggest steal of this year's draft? Don't give it to me now. I want you guys to think about it while we're on this break for this 1.5-minute break. And tell me who your biggest steal is. I know who mine is. I want to know who your guys' steals are. And then I want to talk a little bit about the NBA with what's going on in the playoffs right now. And I don't know if I want to talk NHL because let's just be real here. The only team I pay attention to in the NHL is my Pittsburgh Penguins. And, well, I have an idea of how that's going to end. And it's not good. But we'll be right back here on the Tanndemonium Sports Show. We are back after a 3-week hiatus with my COVID and my wedding and all of that. We are a proud member of the Vendetta Sports Media Podcasting Network. We broadcast live every Tuesday evening, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Twitch, twitch.tv/Vendetta Sports Media. We'll be right back.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. In case you hadn't heard, your favorite Renegade Sports Media Group has its own Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Vendetta Sports Media to support our efforts to continuously bring you sports, gaming, and other media coverage as only we can. We've got 4 different membership tiers. For $3 a month, we'll give you a simple thank you on our Patreon site. For $6 a month, you get a thank you and you get to become a recruit in Jackson Law's Vendetta University Gaming Series. For $10 a month, you get everything from the previous tiers, a special thank you at the end of our videos, free access to our upcoming Discord chat, and a free koozie after 4 months. And then the big dog, $50 a month, gets you everything from the previous tiers, as well as opportunities for Fantasy League invites, stream gaming, possible invites to mock NFL and NBA draft sessions, a once-a-month Google Hangout, and after 4 months, a free t-shirt. Yeah! Go to patreon.com/Vendetta Sports Media and help us to improve our pledge to bring you the best sports, gaming, and other media coverage.
Yeah! We're back here on the Tanndemonium Sports Show. We're broadcasting live here on Twitch, twitch.tv/Vendetta Sports Media. I guess I'm going to have to redo that one since you're not doing, well, you could probably still do the college football, the Vendetta.
Yeah, we figure it out.
You can do Vendetta U when the NCAA game comes out. Was it this year?
Nah, it's not this year, I don't think.
What? That's disappointing.
I think it's next year, probably.
Yeah, I think it's next year. I'm waiting to buy a next-gen console
just
for when NCAA returns.
You know what?
If I could show it right now, I can't. You can't see it behind me. My PS3 is plugged into this TV behind me with NCAA 14 inside of it because I still play it.
Yo, I'm gonna have to come over. I'm gonna have to come over to Casa de Taylor and play some.
Come on, get a beat down. Let's go. I got updated rosters.
I got an emulator on my PC, so that's how I play it when I need my fix.
Nice. See, I need to move back into that because I used to have a lot. I used to have a lot of the older games on PC. I haven't done that in a while. But Brian, I got the updated rosters. I got last season's roster on here. You come over, get your beat down. Let's go.
Oh, I'm sure.
Did you do the updates that you can get on your PC? What's it called? Have you seen like the college revamped where you can download like?
I have a friend who did that and he loves it. I haven't done it yet.
Yeah,
I haven't been brave enough to try it.
I got the emulator. I got the emulator on my PC and then did the whole college revamp system. And what's so great about it is they have a playoff like application that you can plug into the game. So like outside of the game, you just plug in the teams that you want ranked, and then it puts them in the playoff format, and you play the actual bowl games, and then eventually to a national championship.
Wow, that's so pretty intense.
I love messing with it.
Wow, I might have to do a Zoom. We might have to do a Zoom, and I'll share my screen and let you take control.
And not only that, but it's like you can add, like I think you can go up to 8 and 12 team playoffs as well, so you can expand the playoffs and make it really interesting.
Nice.
Live out your fantasy of a non-Power 5 conference, getting in as like a 7th seed in an 8-seeded conference, and then running all the way to the tournament.
See, the only sports games that I've been playing right now, I've been playing the show, MLB The Show 22.
Nice.
Okay. I'm a power hitting first baseman on the Pirates.
Of course.
I don't know. Yeah. Oh. And I've been playing WWE 2K22. I've been doing the My GM because I got bored with the My Rise. So I've been doing the My GM. And I've been enjoying it. It's kind of fun. It's real basic and simplistic, but it's kind of fun. So
that might be the other reason. NCAA, the show, and WWE 2K. Those will be the first on the next gen console. Those will probably be the first 3 games I buy.
Getting a PS5 or a Series X?
That is a great question. I have not decided that yet.
It's whatever your wife will let you have. We know.
It's also whatever, depending on whatever time I even have to be able to do it. Because
That's another.
It depends on whatever you can get your hands on first,
right?
Because they're hardly ever available, either one of them.
Right.
That's true.
I'm playing this whole situation by ear because
hey, that's the way
getting the console, having the money to do it, having the time to do it, all those things. Like
I'm actually thinking about getting the Quarry. The Quarry is coming out this summer, and if you are a fan of Hard Rain, the Quarry sounds like it's going to be it's like a story-based horror game where it's like you play as like these counselors at it like the very last day of camp, and like there's like a murderer around there, and there's supposed to be like 186 different endings to the game. So it's like that sounds like it's right up Bryan Tann's alley.
Wow.
So, but anywho, so before we went to break, I asked you guys, what are your, and I'm actually, I'm going to bring Goat Person himself in. I'm going to bring Garrett in here as well, Mr. Goat Person. I want to know who are your steals of the draft? And I'm going to give mine last. So I want to start with you, Jackson. Who is your steal of the draft and why? And then we're going to give a quick comment.
Just like singular wise, because I think a lot of teams had like a great draft and got great value. Like I could talk about how like the Giants getting Thibodeau and Evans like at 5 and 7 is like
the New York teams did great.
Those are two number one overall talents and got them at 5 and 7. That's incredible value. But this dude, I have no idea how he slid so far down the draft. Like I get it, he had some like injury issues, but he's just so good. I don't understand why he slid. It's Nakobe Dean going all the way to the 3rd round, 83rd to the Eagles. Eagles killed the draft, I think. So
the Eagles definitely got better this draft. But you want to talk about a team that got better? The Eagles did get better.
That's including the AJ Brown trade.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's got to be Nakobe Dean getting picked up again, 83rd, 19th overall pick in the 3rd round. It's insane to me that he fell that far.
Yeah, I mean, if you read some of the reports, if you believe some of the reports, apparently there were some injury concerns there. But at the same time, I went into this draft feeling the way that I felt throughout most of the season. If you get a guy from Georgia, you probably won. Especially if you get a guy from that defense, you probably won. They got 2 of them in the 1st round, which is pretty ridiculous. They got Devontae Wyatt and they got Quay Walker. So Green Bay's defense got really good. As much as I'd love to pick the Kobe Dean because I think that's a good one, I'm going to go with another one, and I'll go with the other New York team. I'll say the Jets did a pretty good job robbing this draft blind too. They crushed it, I thought, getting Sauce Gardner 4th overall. Then they get Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, 10th overall. Then they trade back into the latter half of the 1st round, and they get Jermaine Johnson with the 26th overall pick. He was a guy a lot of people had in their top 15. Probably, the 3rd best edge rusher on this board, and the Jets get him at 26, and they get 3 legit top 15 talents in 26 picks. So I'll go Jermaine Johnson, 26th overall on the Jets. That's a great move for them.
All right, Goat Man. Who do you have as who do you think is like the steal?
I think kind of sticking with Jackson's theme of picking linebackers who kind of fell in the draft a little bit. I was really high on Christian Harris this year coming out of Alabama.
Yes.
And he fell to the 3rd round as well, falling 75 to Houston. I think that he's gonna be that guy who's gonna anchor that defense for years to come, playing right in the middle of the field there. I think that he had a chance to go probably late 1st, early 2nd round talent kind of. And the fact that he fell all the way to 75 is criminal to me.
Yeah,
Houston is another team. Houston's another team that low-key had a really good draft.
I would agree with that. I thought they did a really good job. And they didn't really try to go after one particular position. They were just like, look, we need everything.
Was best.
So just grab who's there. And I thought it was great. But they also got really good talent for their trouble. Like a guy like Christian Harris, man, he's a dart. He just gets everywhere. And the national championship game against Georgia, he was making play after play to really keep Alabama in that game. And, of course, things got crazy in the 4th quarter. And Georgia eventually got ahead and stayed ahead. But Christian Harris was keeping Alabama alive for a lot of that game on defense in the national championship.
I think if Houston plays their cards right, they're not picking in the top 5 next year. They're at least
probably in the top 12.
Yeah.
Davis Mills, QB1, baby.
Davis Mills.
Oh, man. Captain Neck, baby. Captain Neck. Here we go.
I'm going to say, and this is for a team that hasn't, other than, one guy who's already on the roster, and a guy who left the roster a couple of years ago, they hadn't really been able to do too well with drafting wide receivers. I'm going to go with the George Pickens pick. This is a guy who, number one, if he doesn't hurt his ACL, he's coming out. He's top 5 easily. I mean, and a lot of the character stuff that they're trying to put on the guy, it's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. With the car accident or whatever, he wasn't intoxicated, he wasn't inebriated, he wasn't driving. The worst thing that happened, he wasn't wearing his seatbelt. Oh my God, a 21-year-old is not wearing his seatbelt. Put him in prison. Better not say that out loud because they probably will. He lives down south. But I mean, and then the stuff that's going on the field. I mean, look, don't you want a nasty, mean wide receiver that's gonna abuse every defensive back he goes up against?
And if there's a team that's gonna want a receiver with that kind of physical streak to him, wouldn't it be the team that employed Hines Ward for his entire
I was
career?
just getting ready to say.
Wouldn't that be the team that wants that guy?
We have not.
Plus,
had
they
a
needed a blocker like that.
Right.
They needed a blocking receiver like George Pickens. Honestly,
and George Pickens will do everything. He will do everything that's needed.
Here's the thing. I almost went with the George Pickens pick
but
as
you
well.
Knew I was.
Well, also, yeah, I got 3 Steelers fans in here, okay? So I was giving y'all the opportunity to go homer with this pick.
I didn't want to make it too obvious, so I went on to somewhere else.
But the picture of him getting drafted where it's just a weird photo of him. Have you guys seen this photo of him in his house?
Go ahead and share it. You got it?
I don't have it up right now. I'm just saying that I saw someone say, and I 100% agree with this, this man is either going to be a top 5 receiver all time or one of the biggest busts ever. Like there's going to be no in between here because of that picture of him just standing there, this little hat, face covering on, just staring at the screen.
Oh my God.
Let me see if I can find it.
Here's my thing about George Pickens.
It's so meme worthy.
Here's my thing. Like the last real, Chase Claypool. Now we gave him the nickname Mapletron before anyone else did. That was us. I did not call him Mapletron at all last year because he didn't play like someone who was worthy of having his own nickname. He played like garbage last year. So I'm not ready to call him a significant draft pick at wide receiver as of yet because time is only going to tell. He had one good year, one crap year. We'll see. Deontay Johnson, late round pick. He's definitely done well, but he didn't come in with the pedigree at this point in time. Right. Antonio Brown, nobody knew what they were getting from him when they drafted him in the 6th round.
I got it up. I got the picture up.
And then of course, when you look at, I swear this dog, she's getting on my nerves. I don't know. She really wants the affection and attention. But when you look at, hold on, there we are. Wow.
That is so meme worthy.
That is beyond meme worthy.
I'm already seeing people that are photoshopping things on the screen right here. Like, what is George Pickens watching?
I could actually
a bunch of different stuff.
Dude, he is mean mugging Goodell so hard. He's
again,
mean mugging.
He's a top 5 receiver all time or one of the greatest busts in NFL history. There will be no in between with this pick.
True. That is true. And the thing is when fantastic. You even look at when they drafted James Washington, when they did not do James Washington any real. I mean, James Washington,
not really. No,
James Washington should have been he's so much better than the opportunities he's been given. So I don't know if it's something that Tomlin is seeing from him during practice, if he just can't translate it onto the field when he needs to, or what. But this is probably one of the biggest picks. And now you've gotten your first round draft pick. Now he not only has a safety net in Pat Freiermuth, who catches everything that's thrown to him, but now you've got a wide receiver that may or may not be able to be comparative to Jamar Chase, where you see what the hell he did his rookie year. Who's going to be shocked if George Pickens does the same thing?
I might be a little shocked. Now Trey brings up the one guy I wanted to
Calvin Austin. That's your
Calvin
guy.
Austin the third. That's the guy that should scare people. You got a guy that can run a 4.3, and you get to move that guy around. Shout out to Memphis. A guy in Matt Canada's offense that usually needs to utilize a guy with that kind of speed as far as jet motion goes and how they're going to move a guy like that around in the formation and try to get him in space. That's a guy that excites me. The collective speed of this wide receiver unit got way better after this draft. And it improved with Pickens, and it got even way better after Calvin Austin.
And now we don't know what we're going to get out of Miles Boykin, but Miles Boykin, from what I've heard of him, well, I haven't heard that much because, he gets drafted high, then he just falls down the Ravens depth chart.
The Ravens failing to develop receivers, perish the thought.
Yeah, well, it's not like they have a quarterback that can throw.
Even I didn't go there. Jeez.
I mean, look, I'm here, but I'm going to let that go. I'm going to leave it alone. But I mean, if you're Miles Boykin, don't you go into this season with a bit of a chip on your shoulder and you start really trying to up your game a little bit?
He should.
He should, especially when you go up against your own team twice. Dude, your team traded you into not just an in-division rival, but their most hated rival. They had no care about you going there.
That's the same thing that happened last year with the guy that got moved from the Ravens to the Steelers. Chris Wormley was in the same situation. And this guy got pressed into duty because Stephon Tuitt didn't play the entire season because of the situation, the circumstances surrounding him. Tyson Alualu gets hurt after 6 quarters, so they didn't have him the rest of the season. Chris Wormley gets pressed into duty, and I was saying this throughout the course of the second half of the season. Chris Wormley surpassed Yeoman's work. He was putting up starters work by the time it was over. He faces Baltimore, and afterwards, he goes, yeah, it was a motivating factor. They got rid of me and sent me to Pittsburgh. Of course I was ready to come in and do what I had to do to be motivated to beat this team and play well. And he did last season. So now this defensive line comes into this season with Chris Wormley as a depth guy on this defensive line. And a lot of that was because of the motivation that he got. And Mike Tomlin told him that. He said, look, they didn't want you anymore. They sent you here. So they're not even afraid to face you.
Right.
And that gave Chris Wormley the motivation that he needed. So if Miles Boykin isn't looking at it that way, then the fault's on Miles Boykin.
Right. And I'll tell you the truth. This defensive line, as difficult as it was to watch them last season, these young guys, Loudermilk and Wormley, have gotten so much more work in. I seriously and sincerely believe that this Steelers defensive line, this front seven, with the addition of Miles Jack with the linebacking core. Don't forget my guy Montravius Adams, man. Montravius Adams is doing his thing. I love the motor. I love the intensity. I love the agility. And they put him in that zero tech. And my man had less than a week of practice, and he came in ready to go. And from the moment they put him on the field, he's performed. They brought him back to come with this group too. So now this defensive line has the most depth we've probably seen in a decade. So assuming Stephon Tuitt returns, you have Stephon Tuitt, you have Cam Hayward, you have a healthy Tyson Alualu, you have Montravius Adams, you have Loudermilk, you have Chris Wormley, and you have DeMarvin Leal, who they drafted in the 3rd round out of Texas A&M. This is the kind of defensive line depth that I was looking to find, and I figured this would happen in the offseason. I had been saying this throughout the course of the offseason pretty much since January came and went. I said Kevin Colbert had the most cap space he's had probably in a decade. So he had a chance to not only shed a couple contracts that he didn't want or need, but really reestablish a lot of the depth on this roster. And they did that at every position except maybe offensive tackle. That might be the one they didn't really do a lot with. Well,
but on the defensive side of the ball, I think they did incredibly well. And Trey pointed out Levi Wallace.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say.
I love the fact that they brought Ahkello Witherspoon back. I loved how they did that with the defensive backfield. And then not only that, but you bring back Terrell Edmonds on a 1-year deal. That feels like a show improved to me. Then you signed DeMonte Kazee from the Cowboys. The safety position feels a lot deeper. You got 6 guys now that can play safety on this team. You got 4 guys you trust at corner.
They're getting ready to shore up Minka for the future. He's going to be getting that big contract. Yeah, he's going to be getting that before we go into training camp.
By the way, speaking of Minka's extension, they got $11 million in cap space left for this season. They still have $75 to play with for next year.
Right.
They're not done. They're not done.
Like when you're talking about that offensive tackle position, I seriously think that they're going to be looking at some of these undrafted rookies. They're going to bring some of them in, and I guarantee you, right about now, Kendrick Green is going to be moving over to guard because
I anticipate as much, if not the backup center position.
Well, I think they want that intensity of his on the offensive line. So if he becomes the starting guard, he's got to earn it. If he doesn't, that's fine. He can go to be in the backup.
I like the thought of Mason Cole and James Daniels coming in and creating a lot more competition on that line because they need it. Mm-hmm. Here's something else to keep in mind. It's only May. We could still find a tackle or two that maybe becomes a cap casualty. It's not that uncommon. We could see a guy or two come across the wire here that still say, hey, let's take a flyer on this guy because they need a body here and there. So it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that they may not be done adding a tackle.
Great tackle free agents next year.
And there's some good free agents next year. That $75 million in cap space comes into play when they're looking at tackles next year too. So I'm talking about as far as backups go.
Yeah.
But as far as the starters are concerned, Dan Moore Jr., I am pretty much impressed with him. By the end of the season, he might have been their most reliable offensive lineman. Chuks Okorafor is the one you have to keep an eye on. They brought him back for a couple years at right tackle, but that contract, it's very easy to get rid of if they need to. It's also not largely expensive. So if they need to reset at right tackle, they can do that pretty easily moving off of Chuks Okorafor.
Right. And the last thing that I'll say about George Pickens, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, he needs to go to a mature wide receiving core with leadership. You know what? Here's the thing.
This ain't it.
This ain't it. But that don't mean he needs it. What if he's the guy that's going to come in and maybe that energy, that fire, that attitude, maybe that gets Chase Claypool not falling on his ass all the time. I'm sorry, George Pickens does not strike me as the guy that he's going to watch one of his teammates that lines up opposite of him, let him run, and then just keep tripping and falling or doing idiotic dives for a ball when he should have just caught the ball fleet-footed and gone. You don't think George Pickens is going to get in Chase Claypool's face if he puts forth the same effort as he did last year?
He may not need to, because all George Pickens has to do is do what he did at Georgia. He didn't drop a lot of passes at Georgia. That's worth pointing out.
Or he could just give him the stare that he was giving Goodell when he got drafted.
Or
even
look at him from across the practice field.
Or he could treat him the same way he treated Daxton Hill when Georgia faced Michigan in the playoffs. There's that too.
That is true.
But there's a lot of things that stack up with George Pickens, one of the lowest drop rates in college football. That's what I'm looking at. But it might not just be about Pickens. There's other guys you got to keep in mind. Remember, they signed Gunnar Olszewski during the offseason.
Yes.
We talked about Miles Boykin. And Anthony Miller is still around.
Yeah.
Anthony Miller, who has familiarity with Mitch Trubisky during their days in Chicago.
Yeah.
This is a pretty deep wide receiving core that if a couple guys don't even have to be standouts, if they just become very efficient at doing certain jobs, it could become a much better wide receiving core and making Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett's job a lot easier next season.
And I'll tell you the truth, if this wide receiving core can start getting the job done next year, maybe if Deontay does not stay, maybe his loss doesn't hurt as much.
I feel like this draft specifically, when it comes to wide receivers, 6 of them being taken in the first round, I forget what the number 15 was. I think it was in the first 2 or 3 rounds. It was a ridiculous number. Not only should Deontay Johnson be on notice, but I think wide receivers across the league, especially wide receivers making big money or due to make big money, should be put on notice. Because this draft, if it told you anything, it told you, hey, there's talent coming behind you in the pipeline here. And you could be replaced, and they're a lot cheaper than you are. So if you want to go get paid, we'll send you to a place where you can get paid. And we'll find the next replacement that plays just like you, if not better. I think if this draft told us anything,
I mean, hell, Tennessee
wide receiver talent's out there.
I mean, hell, Tennessee proved that.
They did indeed. They moved. Now, granted, this is a move. Tennessee moving A.J. Brown to Philly, I feel like that was a win-win for everybody involved. Tennessee moved the guy that
except for Mike Vrabel, because Mike Vrabel was pissed.
I think Mike Vrabel's upset, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
But I think A.J. Brown decided he didn't want to be in Nashville anymore. Tennessee decided they wanted to move on. Eagles needed a guy that could make big plays for Jalen Hurts. So it feels like that's a win-win-win all around, except for maybe Mike Vrabel.
Right. Well, and Ryan
Shout out Treylon Burks, though.
And Ryan
Yes. Woo pig, my man.
Woo pig, baby.
But I'll tell you,
that's a hell of a pick for Tennessee.
And the one thing that I'll say here, and I'll let it be known, I love that point that Deontay and a lot of these other, because here's the thing, and Josh, this has been said since you and I were kids. Wide receiver really started becoming a real diva position in the early 90s. When you start getting into the early mid-90s, it really became a diva position when you got guys like Keyshawn Johnson, Randy Moss, and I mean the list can go on and on. T.O., especially T.O.
But
it's gotten more so in a lot of ways, rightly so, because a lot of these wide receivers are making quarterbacks look good when maybe they aren't as good at, like, they don't have the accuracy. I mean, you basically have made a lot of guys look like their accuracy is on par with a Peyton Manning, with a Tom Brady, when they're really not.
Some people say that's the case with Antonio Brown making Ben Roethlisberger look better than he was. Some
Yes,
people can make that case, and every once in a while, I'm one of those people. But to your point, the Keyshawn Johnsons, the T.O.s of the world, I forget who the third name was that you mentioned, the Randy Mosses, those guys all produced.
Yeah.
When the ball was put in their direction.
Megatron as well.
Megatron, those guys, when the ball was in their direction, they caught it, they produced, and they produced in high, consistent volume. So
and
with those guys,
Ochocinco.
Chad Ochocinco as well. When those guys had the ball thrown in their general direction, especially T.O. in his prime, we forget T.O. came back off a broken freaking leg and played in the Super Bowl, caught 11 passes.
Yeah.
We forget about that.
There's no way in hell he should have.
He might as well have been Greg Jennings in that Super Bowl the way T.O. was. Like we tend to leave that part out when we talk about T.O. But T.O. at his best, remember he was in San Francisco, I think he caught 20 passes in a playoff game. This guy produced at levels that other guys outside of that group we're talking about weren't capable of. That's what put them in such a higher echelon. Now you have the Devontae Adams of the world who produces at a ridiculous, consistent clip. Those guys now that can produce at high volume, the Michael Thomases of the world, the best ones are the ones that can produce and not try to create as much attention around them by being consistent, but also living up to that mark. There aren't as many there. So if you can identify who those guys are, it probably feels a lot better. That's why I felt so strongly about Jarvis Landry. I'm sitting there going, if Cleveland doesn't want him anymore, then by all means do him a favor and let him go, because some other team can take him and get a lot of production out of Jarvis Landry.
Absolutely. And with Jarvis Landry, you get a guy who is he's just tough, man. He's just toughness personified.
I mean, you're talking about a pair of receivers in Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham III that were on the same team at LSU with Zach Mettenberger as their quarterback. And Jackson knows how good that offense was at LSU with those guys on the same field.
They made Zach Mettenberger.
Those guys lit teams up.
They made him look like he was way better than he had any business of being. And that's just because, you know what? I throw it, you catch it. That's it.
Zach Mettenberger blew out his knee against Arkansas in the final game of that season, and he had Landry and Odell in the field, and it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter because Arkansas had nobody that could stop those two guys, and Jackson can verify that.
I don't want to talk about that.
He said, "I don't want to talk about that."
It was a dark time.
It was a dark time. That was the first Bielema season, I want to say.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to take our final break. Let's talk. You know what?
The sad part about that was it's not. We still had the Chad Morris years coming up. It was going to get worse than that.
Woo!
All right.
Thank God for Sam Pittman. That's all I got to say.
Thank God for Sam.
I'm going to give you guys. You guys the pick of what we talk about in the final segment of the show.
I got something to bring up. It's interesting. It's drama. You guys probably know what I'm talking about.
Jackson's got some drama to bring up.
I'm in. Let's do it. I'm in. It's either that or we talk about winning time, because that's like the only Lakers related topic I want to talk about.
That's
right all I was going to say is
that
if we talk about the NBA, the Celtics found out real quick Giannis is a different type of dude.
Yeah, but
Giannis is just different.
Jaylen Brown is cooking right now, though. Jaylen Brown's got 14, 2 minutes left in the first quarter. 5 of 6 shooting, 2 for 2 from 3.
Yeah. Meanwhile, my kid and I were watching some of that. I think it was game 1. It was either game 1 or game 2. It was in Boston. And my son was like, "Who are the Celtics playing?" I was like, "Those are the Nets." He goes, "Are they any good?" I'm like, "Supposed to be." He goes, "It doesn't look like they are." No, son. No, they're not. Well, why are they bad?
They don't play defense.
They don't play defense, and they got a cancer in their locker room. What does that mean? I'll tell you when you're older. I don't want you to get confused with cancer.
You'll learn with time.
You'll learn with time. All right, we'll be back on the final segment of the Tanndemonium Sports Show. We're broadcasting live here on Twitch, twitch.tv/Vendetta Sports Media. We'll be right back.
The following broadcast is brought to you in association by XP Coffee Company. XP Coffee Company is the fresh brewed coffee made for gamers by gamers. Get amazing flavors like Choco Loco in 8, 12, or 16-ounce bags. Or level up and get Illusion, Isolation, Nightmare, or the Majestic Throne blends in light, medium, or dark roast in whole bean, coarse French press, drip, or fine espresso in 12-ounce, 16-ounce, or 2-pound bags. Wow! Shipping worldwide. If you're in the U.S., go to usa.xpcoffee.co. If you're in Europe or in the U.K., go to www.xpcoffee.co. XP Coffee Company. For gamers, by gamers.
All right, we're back here on the Tanndemonium Sports Show. We're broadcasting live here on Twitch, twitch.tv/Vendetta Sports Media. We are here live every Tuesday evening, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, guys.
So, do you want to talk about the drama real quick?
Yeah, let's hear the drama.
Did you see Ryan Tannehill's comments today?
Yes.
About
pull it up.
Malik.
Do we have it?
I don't have it up. I saw it earlier, but basically he was saying it's not Ryan Tannehill, starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans, former starting quarterback of my Miami Dolphins. Again, we're never going to talk about that era ever again. We're on to brighter pastures here.
Oh man,
nothing happened in between Dan Marino and Don Shula and 2022. Just nothing happened. Nothing. We're not going to talk about it.
Fair enough.
It's like there's like a Family Guy joke where it's Peter and Brian. They're in Europe, and they're in Germany, and they're like, hey, there's like a time missing from this pamphlet. What happened between 1939 and 1945? They're like, oh, no, nothing happened. We were just all on break.
He's like, wait, Germany invaded Poland in 1939. No, they didn't. We had lunch.
No. that's how I feel about Miami over the past 20 years. Anyway.
Hey,
Ryan Tannehill.
You're like me with the Lakers. I say the Lakers are Bruno, and we don't talk about Bruno right now.
Exactly.
We're good.
We do not talk about Bruno. But where was it? Right. Tannehill said that about rookie quarterback Malik Willis, who I forgot what round they drafted Malik Willis in.
Third round, I believe.
Third round? Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, supposedly the quarterback of the future, and he's like, it's not my job to mentor him. And it's caused quite a stir. Yeah. In the NFL world, you have people are like, well, he's right, go ask Jimmy Garoppolo how he felt with Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers with Brett Favre, and these other heirs.
And meanwhile,
Ben Roethlisberger with Mason Rudolph,
Ben Roethlisberger with anyone that they drafted.
Yeah, and then Rodgers again with Love. Yeah, it's like you have a lot of starting quarterbacks in this league that they're just like, that's not my job. I don't want to train my replacement and teach him all my secrets and everything that I know, so that way you can kick me to the curb.
Well, I mean,
I don't think Tannehill is on the level where he could do that, like a Rodgers or a Roethlisberger or a Brady could. But
not to mention, let's keep it funky. If Ryan Tannehill gets kicked to the curb, it's going to be because of Ryan Tannehill, not because
that
of
is true.
Willis. Let's keep that 100%.
Ryan Tannehill has never been an elite quarterback.
I'd make the case Cincinnati should not have made the Super Bowl because Cincinnati put them in the next round. Because Ryan Tannehill found a way to blow that game in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
I'd make that case. Mm-hmm. I'd also make the case that Cincinnati should not have arrived a second time because Kansas City put them in the Super Bowl. That's neither here nor there. But I'd say that run for Cincinnati starts to the Super Bowl because Tennessee allowed them to get there. I mean, It just that's just me. So if Ryan Tannehill should be worried about anything, maybe he shouldn't be worried about mentoring Malik Willis and making sure what happened in the playoffs doesn't happen a second time. Maybe he should start there. That's just me.
I'm on board with that. You know what's funny? I just realized something. I just went to Twitter to see if I could find that. Someone has joined Twitter under my name.
Whoa.
Someone has joined Twitter as @Bryan Tann 10.
You got a fake Bryan Tann.
There is a fake Bryan Tann on Twitter.
Oh, you made it. You got a fake. Good job.
I know. Unless my son has joined Twitter, and I don't think he has. And they've got a Moon Knight avatar. They just joined today, and it's of Mr. Knight. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Oh, maybe it is.
They joined as Mr. Knight.
Ooh.
That
Hey
might be
there.
onto something there. Maybe it is Bryan Jr. You never know.
I don't
Burner
know.
account alert.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check in. I'm gonna have to check in on him. Like, boy, did you join Twitter? Because they joined as at Bryan Tann 10, and it just happened to come up because it says your contact has joined Twitter.
There you go.
I didn't know that I was my own contact.
I think we've got it. I think we've got a winner here. I think it's Bryan Jr.
I'm gonna have to get on him. Be like, hey,
Young Miles
Are you
Morales.
on
You might have to have some discussions with him.
yeah, I'm gonna have to.
See, he caught a wedding garter and everything went downhill.
Yeah, now he thinks he's a grown ass man.
First you catch the garter. Next, you open a Twitter account. The next, you're doing crack in the street. It's an inevitable downhill spiral.
That's awesome.
Oh my God!
Giving hand jobs for crack.
Wow! Wow!
So, but now back on to Ryan Tannehill. Now, if you're Malik Willis, does that not just put into your mind, I'm going to watch every second of every film, and I'm just going to make him look like the garbage bag that he is?
I say Malik Willis is a starter by week 10, probably.
It wouldn't shock me, honestly. If I'm Malik Willis, I'm saying, okay, he's not going to mentor me. Fine, I'll figure it out on my own.
I don't need. It was like, fine, I don't need you.
He's going to go full Thanos, and he'll just do it himself.
Right, and honestly, that's not a terrible thing to do. And I'll come back to my original statement here, because if Ryan Tannehill continues on the trajectory that he is, Malik Willis may not have to do much because Ryan Tannehill may bury himself.
Yeah, because I mean,
Malik Willis, keep your nose clean. Yeah. Anything they tell you to do, you do it. Anything you notice or anything you see, keep a good mark of it and just become a pretty good student of what's around you.
Yeah.
If I'm Malik Willis, I'm just following the straight and narrow till my name is called. That's it.
Yeah. I become a student of the game, as they say.
Right.
And here's the thing.
He'll bury himself.
Right. And here's the thing. A lot of people think that just because someone is a good player in high school or a good player in college or they get drafted, they're a student of the game. No.
Absolutely not.
A student of the game is essentially what Tom Brady ended up doing. As much as I hate to bring the man up, the man is the standard at being the student of the game as a quarterback. Do Tom Brady and Peyton Manning have watched more hours of film than I guarantee you most sports journalists have done? Because there's a lot of sports journalists.
They've watched more hours of film of more than I've watched of anything.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? They still probably do. The way that the Manning brothers talk on their broadcast.
Peyton definitely does.
Yeah, because
I'm sure he does.
Eli probably doesn't, but still.
He probably prepares for those Monday night games just as much as he did back when he was playing.
See, Eli
Peyton watches film. Eli's working on his jokes. That's what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, they work.
I mean,
they're a great tandem.
If you want to continue to talk about students of the game, Reggie White was a student of the game at the defensive line. All right. Lawrence Taylor was a student of the game at the linebacking core. Okay. I'll take it back. I'll take it. I'll stay in that era. Ronnie Lott, student of the game at the safety position. Okay. Darryl Green, student of the game at the cornerback position.
And it also helped that Ronnie Lott was like probably one of the hardest hitting safeties ever, and Darryl Green was still running like a 4.3 in his 40s. So that doesn't hurt.
Well, the fact that
Darryl Green was a burner.
Dude, Darryl Green, I bet you Darryl Green is running a sub 540 now. I bet you he is.
It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't. He's probably still in shape too. Darryl Green looks like that guy when he would be in his 50s and still in shape.
And Ronnie Lott, I'm sure, will take anybody's head off to this day. I'm sorry. If the Bearcat Keith Lee came across the middle, Ronnie Lott would knock his head into the next time zone. Why? Because Ronnie Lott was just that dude.
Ronnie Lott hasn't played in 20 years, and I still fear Ronnie Lott.
Dude, I still have nightmares about Ronnie Lott. And I didn't even play wide receiver. I was a running back. I was a running back my freshman year of high school. By the time I played semi-pro football, I was a defensive lineman. And I still had nightmares of Ronnie Lott. Okay?
Point taken.
If I'm Malik Willis, I become a student. Matter of fact, I try to get Peyton Manning's phone number. And I'm like, fine, you won't? Fine, I'll go to a real quarterback. Peyton Manning on line 1, please. Because Tom Brady's going to tell him to go to hell. Tom Brady's way too competitive for all that. Now, I'm calling Peyton Manning, and I'm learning everything that Peyton Manning has to do. Matter of fact, I'm calling Peyton Manning, and after I'm done on the phone with Peyton Manning, I'm calling Joe Montana. I'm calling Steve Young. I'm calling Randall Cunningham. Call Fran Tarkenton. Why not? Because These are those last names that I mentioned. Those are guys who are in Malik Willis's play style. Those mobile quarterbacks that make things happen with their legs. They're not so much trying to run, but they're extending plays with their legs so they can throw, or they're just going to set you on fire with their legs. If I'm Malik Willis, that's what I do. Number one, I take the fact that you've been comparing my name with Mike Tomlin's for months now, and you don't take me. Now, the guy who I'm going to be sitting behind is like, yeah, I'm not going to mentor him. Screw him. Now, I'm calling all these Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Good strategy, Cotton.
Yeah, let's see how that pays off. If I'm Malik Willis,
especially to say that publicly too.
Right. I'm getting in touch with these Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and I'm learning everything I can from them. Everything. I even take the chance to call Tom Brady and say, hey, before we start getting into the specifics with our teams, can I just hang out with you for a couple of days? If I'm Malik Willis, I go above and beyond just so I can not only beat Ryan Tannehill, but prove Mike Tomlin wrong too. And prove everyone else wrong that says, oh, this guy is just, he's so rough and he's this and he's only good because he played at a substandard school with substandard competition. But that's just me. I'm just wired.
I'm sure because
I'd make one phone call. I'd make one. If I'm Malik Willis, I'm making one phone call. You know who I'm calling right now? I'll call Russell Wilson.
Hey, that's a good phone call to make.
Call Russell Wilson because another undersized quarterback entering the league, picked in the third round, not expected to really do much, pressed into action pretty early because he beat out a guy who was not really that equipped to be the starter in the first place. If there's a guy who would follow the similar script too, if I'm Malik Willis, I'm calling Russell Wilson and see what he has to say. And Russ, probably the guy that's willing to take a younger guy under his wing and be a little bit more of a mentor. Granted, he's not on the same team. They're in the same conference. But we know in the current era, players talk and they do exchange information.
Yeah, and you know they could do something. They could do something just as like get the same trainer. And, you know, and I see a lot of athletes do that, and that's how they connect. They have the same trainer, and in the off season or in between like mandatory camps, you just go somewhere. You go to California, you go to Florida somewhere. You're on a nice place, and you just work on football together the whole time. And then you're right next to a Hall of Famer.
That's what I'm thinking. That's the guy I'm calling.
Yeah, that's a good one. So let's talk a little bit about the NBA playoffs right about now. Stage is basically set for this next round.
Jaylen Brown has 20 right now. He is shooting 7 of 8 from the field, 4 for 4 from 3.
Wow. Rumble, young man, rumble.
The Bucks are almost down by 20. It is 42-25 in favor of the Celtics.
Wow. Good Lord.
So far, a big bounce back game, too, but still a lot of time left to play. As I can attest, my Memphis Grizzlies came back down 25 plus twice in the same game. Granted, the Boston Celtics are not the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're actually a good basketball team. So
quite true. Point taken.
But still, it just goes to show you that leads can vanish quickly in the NBA. Do not take a 25, 26 point lead in the first half as hammer nail coffin that you're going to win the game.
I just got confirmation. It was Brian Jr. that joined Twitter. Yeah, I wanted to get updated for Marvel stuff and couldn't find it because he's getting into comics now. So Brian, yeah, I went to Odds. I didn't get a chance to tell you my Odds story. I'm no longer going to be shopping at Odds ever again. Now, granted, I haven't been to Odds in a long time, but I went and I'm not going again because my good friend Maria Pekaler, who's obviously pregnant, she goes into Odds. She asks if she can use a bathroom. Now, I understand they don't have public restrooms. But if a woman is obviously pregnant and she asks you to use the bathroom and the people she's with are obviously shopping to spend money, you let her use the bathroom. I don't care.
Yeah,
they sent her across the street. And then we go to the next floor because here's the thing, Jackson, at Odds is literally floor upon floor of nerd stuff. Comic books, movies, vinyl, whatever. We go to one of the other floors. Maria's husband is kind of just sort of standing talking to her. and the guy who just rang me up downstairs in the previous level walks by and doesn't say excuse me. He goes, everyone's getting in my way today. It's like, okay, not spending my money in ads ever again.
Rude. For no reason.
So
customer service.
Mm-hmm. So my son is getting more into comics now because I picked up for him What If number 2. What if Miles Morales number 2, which is What If Miles Morales became Wolverine. And I'm kind of mad that I didn't get a chance to read that. I'm going to see if I can talk him into bringing it down, or maybe it shows up on Marvel Unlimited in the next couple of weeks. Oh. But now he apparently just picked up What If Miles Morales became Captain America, I think, number 3, and some other comics. So he's getting really into it. I just had to tell him, make sure you start boarding and bagging your books, though. So,
true.
But yeah, so that's that. So now here's my thing, and I'm trying to pull up the scores, but I don't want to use it on my phone. I was trying to bring it up on my computer, but I don't know how to use Twitter on the computer. I only know how to use it on the phone. That just lets you know how old I am. But I'll tell you, the Celtics, I seriously think the Celtics, I think they're gonna be the truth. Because I mean, granted, the Nets don't play defense.
No.
The Nets are just an implosion waiting to happen. And it happened. Yeah. But they lost to the
they got swept. Yeah. They didn't just lose. They were the only team that gets swept. At least a depleted Nuggets team, which has potential back-to-back MVP Nikola Jokic on it, was able to get a game, and almost 2 of those games finished close too. So, a couple things bounced Denver's way, then it's a different series. But shout out Nuggets, shout out Denver. I like Jokic.
And the thing is, the defending champs gave the Celtics an ass whooping game 1. Game 2, Celtics are returning the favor. Now that you got Joel Embiid hurt, what you really think
we could get Master Embiid back?
Do you really think that James Harden is going to keep this team afloat until Embiid can come back?
No, they got whipped by the Heat in game 1. They kept it close for a half. And then newly crowned, like right as the show started, 6th man of the year, Tyler Hero. Yes. And Bam Adebayo. Bam out of the Bayou.
Bam on the Bayou.
Absolutely annihilated.
And a depleted team, too.
Yeah, Miami's not at full strength either. That's worth pointing out. I'm of the belief now, with the way the other teams in the East are starting to run into problems, and of course, the Nets getting swept doesn't really help things much either. This really opens the door. And Brian, I agree with you about Boston. Well, one thing I will say is that when Milwaukee plays the game that they are used to playing, and the game that they have really gotten into that mode of playing, there aren't many teams that can keep up with them.
Right.
And I think the thing that's working for Boston right now, if Jaylen Brown isn't going off the way he is, maybe this game doesn't look the way it does.
It's a lot closer.
Because Boston has been relegated to trying to beat Milwaukee from the outside, because Boston can't step in the paint and do what Milwaukee does. It's whether on offense or on defense. They're not built that way. They're not built that way, and they don't have a centerpiece like Giannis that allows them to have that kind of structure.
Right.
With that said, all the other teams in the East having the issues that they have, if there is a team that's going to be able to stop Milwaukee from getting to the finals, it's probably Boston. Because I don't know if anybody else that's left is capable.
Right. And the thing is that if Boston does get past Milwaukee, they're in the finals. They're going to the finals.
I'd agree with that.
I don't watch a lot of NBA, but I do pay attention.
I do think the winner of this series, I don't think they'll have a cakewalk with Miami, especially if if Miami is able to get back to full strength. But I do think that they do beat whoever gets out of this will beat Miami and will be in the finals.
I will say though, Boston Miami might be a fun series.
It would be a very fun series. I honestly think any matchup of Miami and then Bucks or the Celtics would be really fun. And I'm not counting on the 76ers. They're going to go down 0-2. Yeah. And I just don't know if Embiid is going to be able to bring it back because he already has the injury to his hand. It was already affecting him against the Raptors. He was being held in check, not for the whole series, but for 2 games in a row. You could tell his thumb was really bothering him. And the Nick Nurse runs a very well-run machine with Toronto. He is just limited by the type of players that he has. Now Embiid goes from that to a defense. Basically, Spoelstra will do the same thing Nick Nurse did, but on steroids, because he has better players and he has consistent shooting. Overall, everyone on Miami's roster right now is a step above, which some of them you can argue. I really like Fred VanVleet, and I love Precious Achiuwa. It's one of my favorite prospects from 2 years ago, former Miami Heat, Precious Achiuwa.
And it's really unfortunate that Embiid is hurt for Philly, because if there's a guy who's deserving of the MVP, if you're putting that conversation with Jokic, Embiid's in that discussion for me.
Yeah, he's in the discussion.
You catch me on the right day, I might give you Embiid over Jokic, depending on what he did the night before, and it would be a strong case to give. So Philly not having him, it does two things, really. One, it weakens the Sixers, and two, it probably strengthens the argument that maybe Embiid is the MVP.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of which, this was tweeted 5 hours ago by Kurt Warner. I will never understand the, quote, "I'm not here to mentor the next guy," end quote, mentality. So for all you young QBs that need a mentor, DM me and I'll be that guy. Happy to help in any way I can.
If there's any guy that can help a guy figure out how to overcome adversity, it's that guy.
Oh, yeah.
It's Kurt Warner.
Yeah.
Kurt Warner, for
went
sure.
From working in a supermarket to being a Hall of Famer, and he went to 2 different Super Bowls. Was it 2 or 3 different Super Bowls? With the Rams?
3 different Super Bowls.
Or 2 with the Rams and 1 with the Cardinals. I mean, if there's a guy, there's a guy who can mentor a group. It's Kurt Warner.
Yep, and played by Zach Levi, a.k.a. Shazam.
Oh, my God. I forgot about that.
I low-key want to see that movie, though. Low-key. I'm curious.
As well. I'm curious.
The curiosity is peaked.
I agree. I'm checking out this. I'm checking out the scores right now. Pens are down 1-0 to the Rangers. I started to say it earlier. Pens aren't getting past the Rangers. They're just not.
There's a problem I have with the matchup here, and I talked about this yesterday with Tom Barton from Sports Garden out in New York. When you're dealing with a team like the Rangers, where the opposing goaltender, where you may see him give up 2 goals tops on an average night, Shesterkin doesn't give up a lot of goals. And you're not going to get that many chances to score on Shesterkin. So you have to jump on opportunities as you have them if you're the Penguins. And you can't give the Rangers extra opportunities, because if they cash in on those, it makes the job of trying to get through Shesterkin even harder. I don't like this matchup for them. I don't.
Neither do I. I don't see Casey DeSmith getting hot in the playoffs thing. I just don't. And the thing is, though, even if Tristan Jarry was healthy,
right,
it still wouldn't work, because here's the bottom line: the Penguins are nowhere near as fast as they used to be. Malkin used to play with so much speed and fire. This guy's a year coming off of a knee injury. He's 36 years old. He's not, and he's also not willing to change up his style to get the job done. You look at Chris Letang. Chris Letang isn't willing to change up his style to get the job done. He's getting older. Sidney Crosby.
They're not going to.
I mean, they're not going to at all. Because
these guys aren't like Sid. They're not like Sid, where you have the skill set that he has, where you can say, you know what, let me brush up on this one part of my game that's not as strong as the other facets of my game. But Sid doesn't have many flaws to begin with. This is not that same type of dynamic.
Of those
where
guys,
Gino and Letang they're more old dogs that you're not going to teach new tricks to.
Yeah. Of those 3 guys, Sidney Crosby is the only one that I think that's going to be lasting into another decade. Letang is going to be gone within the next 5 years. Gino Malkin is going to be gone. And when I say gone, I mean retired out of the league within the next 5 years or so. Sidney Crosby is someone that I can see playing into his 40s. A la what Gordie Howe did, because
and playing on a decent level. I mean,
and playing at a very good level. Sidney Crosby is going to be the cornerstone of this franchise.
You're talking like Yager type level of playing into his 40s and still being somewhat productive. But now, granted, Sid plays an entirely different game than Yager played. But I mean, Sid grew up idolizing Steve Yzerman. Steve Yzerman was, if you want to talk about 200-foot centers that played the game during their heyday, Steve Yzerman was the guy that best embodied that style of game. So if Sid can continue to play on the trajectory that he was, and I might point out, 11 years ago, we didn't know how long Sid would play because of the concussion issues that he had. So the fact that he's gotten to this point is a freaking accomplishment. And now we're talking about him playing into his 40s. That's how you bounce back from the kind of adversity that he dealt with.
If I'm the Pens, what I do, I let Letang walk. I let Malkin go. I try to see if I can get rid of Malkin to get some back, maybe get some draft capital back. I re-signed Brian Rust because
That's a guy I'd want to keep around, honestly.
Because the thing is, Sidney Crosby's a guy that you can keep this team built around to do something. Brian Rust is a guy who, when Sid finally hangs it up, he's the guy after Sid goes. And if you let Brian Rust go, you're going to regret it.
I would think the guy after Sid hangs it up would be Jay Gensel. That would be the guy, in my opinion. Because Jay Gensel, 40 goal scorer. You can't recreate that in a lot of places. However, Brian Rust does have a lot of value because he's a guy who could score goals. He's a guy who can also help you on the penalty kill. He does a lot of things really, really well. He's a guy I'd want to keep. And I think the problem is Brian Rust might be pricing himself out of Pittsburgh. There's a lot of teams that could use a guy like Brian Rust on their top line as maybe their top penalty killer, maybe helping on their second power play unit. So he's going to price himself out. And he knows this. And I think a lot of teams around the league know it. I don't even think it's going to be a Penguins problem as much as it's going to be, how much is the market willing to dictate that Brian Rust is worth? And if we've learned anything, an item or a good or a service is only as good or is only as valuable as what someone's willing to pay for it.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you the truth, though, if the Penguins are able to hold on to Brian Rust, Gensel, Rust, and Sid are going to be the guys. Like I said, I get rid of Letang. I get rid of Gino. And one of the first things that I try to do is I try to get an actual lights-out goaltender. Because I'm sorry, as long as you've got Tristan Jarry and DeSmith behind him, Jarry is just way too inconsistent for me. He really is. Like, there's nights where he looks really, really great. It's to the point now, Sharon, Mrs. Tann, she knows more about hockey than I do. She's more into hockey than I am. I know hockey. I can talk hockey. And when I watch it, I can get into it. But she knows a bit more about hockey than I do.
All this time you didn't tell me that Sharon's a hockey fan, Brian? Seriously?
She is. Well, I felt bad that one of the bridesmaids basically had a monopoly on you the whole night of the rehearsal dinner. And as a matter of fact, Kim.
We talked a lot of Steelers that night.
And as soon as Kenny Pickett got drafted, I get a DM from her. I told Josh Taylor that the Steelers would be picking Kenny Pickett. I told him.
I never said that he wouldn't. I just expected somebody to like him more.
And honestly, I'm like, why are you telling me? That sounds like it's between you and Josh.
I gave her credit for it. I told her, I was like, it's not that I don't think they want to take him. I don't think they expect him to be there. And to Kevin Colbert's credit, he said the same thing. We didn't expect him to be there.
Right.
Yeah. Which is more of a testament to Kenny Pickett than it is anything against anybody else. But
right. So the whole point that I'm making, though, is that anytime I give her an update on the Penguins, she goes, "Who's in net?" Jarry. Well, that explains it. That's a loss.
Wow.
She does not like Tristan Jarry at all.
Wow.
And when the Pens actually do well with him in net, she goes, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she goes, "I like Matt Murray."
I will have to have a discussion with Sharon the next time we get an opportunity. Absolutely. And while I'm on the subject, I got an SOS from the wife. It looks like I'm needed downstairs with the little guy.
Hey, that's fair enough.
I got to get moving, fellas.
That's fair enough. We're getting ready. We're getting ready to end this. We're getting ready to end the show on that note. Anyway, make sure you guys follow Josh on Twitter, at Josh Taylor HD. Make sure you download the Odyssey app and keep up with 93.7 The Fan here in Pittsburgh. And you can keep up when Josh is going to be on the air because they've got him rotating around. You can also check out KDKA. Go to KDKA.com when they're having that nightly sports talk. You can see Josh Taylor doing that TV thing as well. So, Josh, I guess we'll talk to you in June because that's going to be we'll be start talking NFL and OTAs at that point.
Whew! Can't believe we're there already. This year,
right?
Man, it flies by.
It's flying, and especially you got a little one. So you go ahead and tend to that. We'll see you next week.
Appreciate you, fellas.
Take care, my friend. All right. So, Jackson, anything else you want to throw out there before we go?
Nah, man. I'm just going to be tuned in watching the NBA playoffs. The Nashville Preds play tonight. I may tune in a little bit for that game also. They start right as the Grizzlies game starts, so I may have to have one on one monitor and one on the other. So
Gotcha. All right. Well, you know what? Shout out to Garrett. Thanks for stepping in.
Yes, thank you, Garrett.
for stepping into the irreplaceable shoes that do belong to the Courtney Don't Call a Plumber. Wishing you all the best with your little bambino and whatnot. And we'll be back next week, provided I don't get COVID again. I should be good for another 3 months, unless a new variant shows up that just turns my insides into liquid shit. But with that being said, he's Jackson Law. I'm Bryan Tann. This is the Tanndemonium Sports Show. See you guys next week.